Welcome to Left, Right, Center, where we are covering Colorado politics first on CBS News Colorado. I'm political specialist Sean Boyd. The ballot is now set for Denver's runoff election. It's Kelly Brough versus Mike Johnston. Joining me to unpack the results are analysts Republican Dick Wadhams, Democrat Mike Dino. Brough is the first woman to make a runoff for an open mayoral seat in Denver. She was one of 4 women running. Combined, they got more than half the vote, even though they represented only a quarter of the 16 candidates. That seems to bode well for her in the runoff, Mike.
Well, I think it is historic that we have not seen a woman in an open seat in the runoff. We've certainly seen a couple as challengers in the past. We also saw about 53% of the voters turn out to be women, and that kind of matches the number of the women who got those votes. And so what's going to make this runoff interesting is it's going to be a lot longer than we've seen runoffs before. And so that will, you know, strain the campaign in terms of their funding. There's still limits. And I think they'll have to come up with some ingenious ways to campaign those extra 4 weeks that they haven't had to before.
You know, Brough and Johnston align on a lot of these issues. So her being a female, you know, we always talk about these races in terms of inches, may just be that extra inch here.
It's clearly an advantage, Sean, and they're going to have to find contrasts between the two. And that can get kind of nasty. You know, when candidates find themselves, especially in primary elections, when they line up on the issues, then they have to find other things to contrast, and that can get nasty. I think both candidates are going to be very well financed. They're going to have a lot of money in independent expenditures behind each of them. They both have wealthy wealthy supporters. This is going to be a very expensive race too.
I think so, too. While the runoff pits 2 mainstream Democrats against each other, a far-left candidate almost made the cut. Lisa Calderon, who was endorsed by the Democratic Socialists, was a close third. So what does that say about where this city is at? Recognizing that only 38% of the city's active registered voters turned out, so they may not represent the city as a whole. Dick?
I think the Democratic Socialists are on the ascent. And I think that's a very impressive showing by Calderon, and I think that it shows that they are a big player in Denver politics, and they might elect, Mike and I were talking, as many as 4 members of the city council potentially, and so that's a big deal to go from 1 to 4 if they do it.
You know, you wonder, had there not been so many running in this mayoral race, one might have emerged, really.
Well, yeah, I'll always wonder if Leslie Herod, for instance, had not run, if that would have put her over. I don't know.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa, yeah.
To Dick's point, though, about the council, we saw from Tuesday night till the results we see now on the at-large council race, we saw one of the, Sarah Parody, a socialist-endorsed candidate, move into the top 2 and knock out one of the more esteemed political people in our city, Penfield Tate.
Right.
So definitely they surged, and they have 3 more chances come June 6th.
Be interesting. You know, I got to wonder, we're talking about Calderon coming in a close 3rd place. So who does she endorse? Brough, Johnston, and what about the others? And does it even matter, you know?
I think it could help, but you know, the socialists are out there on the fringe. There will be a situation of, well, do they want to even endorse a mainstream candidate? And does a mainstream candidate want their endorsement?
Right.
That's right.
Do you think, Dick?
I don't know. I mean, I could see a strategy of moving left in the runoff and trying to get that support.
Way of separating yourself.
Yes, and maybe. By the way, I think it is a shame that Penfield Tate is not going to be on the council. I mean, he's given so much to the city. He's a smart guy. He's thoughtful. I think he would have been a real asset, and I think it's unfortunate he's not going to be there.
Yeah, he used to be here with us.
We were here. Yes,
I know.
Maybe he'll come back. If they get tired of me, bring Penn back.
All right, this is going to be Dick's favorite topic here. Denver Elections Division and Clerk Paul Lopez took a bit of heat this election over the slow pace of vote tallying and their dinner break, election night. I, for one, think the criticism is a bit over the top. You know, I think it's fine if people want to wait until the last minute to turn in their ballots. But then I'm like, okay, well then don't complain if it takes a while to get the results, okay?
Yes. Well, and I found out something else, Sean, about the county clerk's office. Apparently, they are very, very restricted in terms of their workspace, and they need more space. Now, okay, that's legitimate. My question is, they've known about this problem for years. Why don't they get more space? I mean, Denver is rolling in money. Why don't they go ahead and build out a bigger office or get a bigger office? I mean, it's still no excuse, and I think it's embarrassing for the second largest county in Colorado to take 3 days to count votes. I just do.
What does the small space have to do with it? They're all crammed in and they need more breaks?
Well, more
dinner breaks.
Yeah, more space for the food.
Yeah, that's right.
But listen, Dick and I were looking for the pizza the other night.
I know, we didn't
so
get
it's not like
here.
we weren't interested in food either. So I think Paul was straight up. I mean, that was refreshing. If I was the clerk, I probably would have said, well, the scanner got jammed and I can only get 2,500 through. But no, they were straight up. He's got a lot of volunteers helping him. He wanted to appreciate him. And, I do think if he had an opponent on the ballot, he probably would have got everything done on Tuesday night. But Paul ran unopposed, and he took some liberties to just take care of his people.
Well, let me observe that next year's presidential election, there will be a huge turnout in Denver. And if it took this long to count this number of votes, they'll be working Thanksgiving in the election in 2024.
I bet Paul is glad to hear you making case for him to get a bigger, nicer space. Right?
I think he should have that if that's what he needs. So.
Well, it appears we have several city council races headed to runoffs as well. 2 of them involving incumbents, Candy Cedabaka and Chris Hines. So what do you make of that, Mike?
Well, I think incumbents, it is rare that they have challenges in Denver. I think both of them are in a good spot to get reelected. But the big deal is 2 of those, Chris is taking on a challenger from the socialist group, and of course Candy has been their prime person, and so we'll see if that organization has the same turnout push that they did for the general election. That will be key for them.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, Hines might have to move left. I mean, to hold on to his seat, and given what we saw in this election this week, so he might be forced to move left.
So do we see this council moving further to the left after this election, or being more moderate after this election?
Well,
I mean, it depends on
let's
how
just key off of the at-large races. More to the left people are going to be on that. And certainly maybe more so than the people they're replacing, Robin Kanish and Debbie Ortega. So I think we're seeing a little bit of drift there.
We shall see 2 long months ahead of us, right?
Exactly.
Up next, the chaotic scene at the Capitol by high school students and how it shut down debate. We'll be right back. Back to Left, Right, Center. The removal of a student from the state capitol is sparking controversy. The student was among a couple dozen kids in the gallery of the House of Representatives. Sergeant-at-Arms say the students were yelling and disrupting debate on the floor, so they brought in State Patrol. Here's a look at what happened next.
Out. Ma'am, you need to step out. Come on, guys. We need to get her out. We will be going into a break recess. We need you to step up so we can get her out. We're not asking you guys to leave. We need to pull her out. If you refuse to get up, you're going to be removed as well.
The chaos started when one student started yelling at lawmakers from the gallery. Disrupting official business is against the rules. When officers asked 2 young men to move so they could remove a young woman, one of them refused and he was carried out. Debate stopped. Doors were locked. Speaker of the House Julie McCluskey says the law enforcement response was clearly disproportionate to the students' actions, and she's calling for an investigation. House Majority Leader Monica Duran noted that the student that was dragged out was Latino, and she felt the level of force was unnecessary and disproportionate compared to the treatment of his peers. Dick and Mike, thoughts?
Well, predictably, the Democratic leadership blames law enforcement first. And I got to tell you, Sean, I'm getting a little tired of disruption of official proceedings by both sides. And it goes from the extreme of the U.S. Capitol attack to people who think they can stand up and yell at the Colorado House of Representatives. If one of those kids had thrown something at those representatives, they would have blamed the law enforcement for not acting fast enough. I just think those kids are not taught a good lesson if they get away with that kind of stuff. Now, was it disproportionate? I did not see anything disproportionate. Those officers have got a responsibility to protect that chamber. I think they did, and I think it's unfortunate that they always blame the cops first. I'm just tired of it.
I think there was some concern that the kid who was carried out was Latino. They were trying to get at a female student, white student. When they did get to her, she did go out with them. She didn't refuse to leave. I think they removed the Latino student because he sat there and refused to leave.
Well, first of all, let's talk about why they're there. I mean, they're very concerned about gun safety.
Right.
And what's happened in other, in the public schools. There's been part of a national movement to walk out and demonstrate, and we saw that this week. I think the students, are very passionate about what they're trying to do. And, they don't know the protocol. Listen, I sat in the gallery one time and around that age was asked to leave. And it was more peaceful than that, but my removal. But nonetheless, I think it's worth investigating. I mean, they should say to themselves, can we handle these things better? And maybe they get to the point, maybe not. But the bottom line is, it looked a little rough. And I think people have some valid reasons to look into it.
I think the question would be, what do you do when somebody refuses to leave?
Yes.
So they sit there and they say, I'm not going, I'm not leaving.
Well, what was interesting is the young woman who seemed to be yelling. She walked out very peaceably.
Right. I know.
And the other gentleman was like, hey, I'm just sitting here. But we're not there. I mean,
right.
They were trying nicely to say, hey, can you move so we can take care of this situation? Right. And that's why there needs to be a review of what happened.
I think because it was kids, this became a bigger deal. I mean, certainly I've seen people removed, adults removed from the gallery before when they disrupted proceedings. That is standard protocol. You escort the person out if you can't abide by the rules.
Yeah, but those state troopers, they've got to be on pins and needles every day that House is in session or the Senate is in session, because in this day and age, think about how vulnerable those senators and representatives are from that gallery. I don't think you can play around with this stuff. And if a kid, I assume that young woman and that young man were, 16, 17 years of age, if they can't figure out that there's some level of decorum that should be maintained when they're in that chamber, then our education system has totally failed them. I just have no tolerance for this.
I spoke to one of the sergeant-at-arms down there, since I know all of them, and he had said that this really started in the lobby, that small lobby area outside the main entrance into the house, and he had told them there, you can't yell.
Exactly.
You can be here, but you can't yell. And so the rules were pretty clear in this case.
Well, but they're in the age group that doesn't adhere to the rules.
We know that.
And
I know that.
At 16 and 17, I rarely did.
You need to tell me.
By the way, I understand the passion on this violence. I do, but I also know that we can't just let this stuff go by without some kind of action. I just don't think we can.
Well, it sounds like there will be an investigation, so we'll see. Thanks for watching Left, Right, Center. We'll see you next week.